Before we begin our journey through the corridors of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, I want you to take a moment for yourself. Adjust your pillows, pull the blanket up just a bit higher, and let the weight of the day start to dissolve into the mattress. Dim the lights if you haven't already. We aren't here to dissect the loud, chaotic headlines of the present or the heavy scandals of the past. Instead, think of this as a quiet, late-night walk through a house that has seen everything but refuses to blink. We are looking for the quiet victories, the moments where common sense, restraint, or a single wise decision kept the whole experiment from rattling apart. History is often just a collection of imperfect people trying to make sure the roof doesn't leak, and tonight, we're going to appreciate the craftsmanship of that survival. Aj hum White House ko ek living museum kaitara dekinge, not as a fortress of power, but as a home that learned how to endure. Here's the thing about the White House. It was never actually supposed to be finished. When Pierre L'Enfant was sketching out the president's house, he envisioned a palace that would make Versailles look like a studio apartment. It was an ego project for a nation that hadn't even figured out how to collect taxes properly yet. George Washington, acting like the only adult in a room full of dreamers, had to step in and scale the whole thing down. He knew that if you build a house that's too big for its inhabitants, the inhabitants eventually start acting like they're bigger than the house. Washington's defining accomplishment here wasn't just picking the location, it was his restraint. He chose a design that was dignified but fundamentally human. He ensured that the seat of power looked like a home rather than a monument to an individual. It was a refusal to go big that allowed the building to actually become great. It set the precedent that in this country, the office is a temporary lease, not a permanent throne. Construction was, to put it mildly, a logistical nightmare that felt a bit like trying to build a Lego set while someone is actively throwing the instructions into a fireplace. The site was a swampy mess, the budget was essentially a suggestion, and the labor force was a patchwork of local artisans and European immigrants who were mostly just confused about the humidity. Yet, out of this chaos, a structure emerged that was surprisingly resilient. When the British showed up in 1814 with torches and a very bad attitude, they thought they were ending a story. They burned the interior to a crisp, leaving only the charred sandstone walls standing like a hollowed-out ribcage. But here, where the system proved its worth, instead of moving the capital or building something entirely different, the decision was made to rebuild exactly where they stood. It was a massive, collective, "we're still here" to the rest of the world. James Hoban, the original architect, returned to oversee the restoration, proving that the physical house was secondary to the idea it represented. They didn't just fix the walls, they reinforced the concept of continuity. By the time we get to the mid-1800s, the White House was less of a pristine sanctuary and more of a crowded, leaky boarding house. Imagine trying to run a global superpower from a desk where the person next to you is complaining about their pension, and a tourist is trying to snip a piece of your curtains for a souvenir. It was a mess, but the building adapted. Every time it reached a breaking point, a quiet logistical genius would step in to add a wing, a floor, or a new way to route the staff. The invention of the East Wing and West Wing wasn't some grand architectural statement. It was a desperate attempt to move the office away from the bedroom so the president could actually get a full night's sleep without tripping over a diplomat. This separation of life and work was a subtle but vital preservation of the presidency's humanity. It allowed the person inside to be a person, even for just a few hours a night. The most monumental save in the building's history, however, happened under Harry Truman. By 1948, the White House wasn't just old, it was literally collapsing. Chandeliers were swaying because people were walking in the room above them, and at one point, a piano leg actually crashed through the floor into the ceiling of the room below. The building was a death trap. Truman could have easily torn it down and built a modern, glass and steel monstrosity. Instead, he made the grueling, expensive decision to gut the house. They kept the historic exterior shells but completely replaced the internal skeleton with steel. It was like keeping the skin of an old book but replacing all the fragile, yellowed pages with high-grade parchment. This project preserved the aesthetic soul of the nation, while giving it the structural integrity to survive the nuclear age. It was a masterpiece of hidden engineering, a defining refusal to let the past crumble just because the present was difficult. As we move through these first 30 secrets of the building's hidden life, you start to realize that the White House is essentially a series of successful repairs. It's a building that has been burned, poked, prodded, and expanded, yet it remains fundamentally the same shape Washington approved. This isn't a story of decay. It's a story of maintenance as a form of love. Every hidden pipe, every reinforced beam, and every secret subbasement added during the Cold War was a vote of confidence in the future. The house stayed standing because people decided it was worth the effort to keep it upright. It's a comforting thought as you drift closer to sleep, that even the most pressured structures in the world can be held together by steady hands and a few well-timed renovations. The building didn't survive by being perfect. It survived by being flexible enough to change without losing its core identity. Think of the way the light looks hitting that white paint at 3:00 a.m. It's not just a house. It's a testament to the fact that things can be broken and made whole again, often stronger than they were before. The secrets of the early layout, the hidden staircases for the service staff, the way the kitchens were moved to keep the smell of cabbage away from visiting royalty, the way the attic was converted from a storage dump into a living space. These aren't just trivia. They are evidence of a living, breathing system that prioritizes function and endurance over ego. Every renovation was a moment where someone looked at a problem and chose a constructive path forward. They didn't quit on the house. They made it better. And as we transition from the stone and mortar of the building to the people and protocols that make it run, remember that the house provides the stage, but the routines provide the heartbeat. Building on that idea of the White House as a living, breathing system we explored in the stone and steel of Part 1, we now move into the invisible clockwork that keeps the heart beating. If the walls are the skeleton, the protocols and daily rituals are the nervous system. There is a strange, quiet comfort in realizing that even in a world that feels increasingly chaotic, there is a place where the mail is delivered at the exact same minute every day, and the flowers are refreshed with a precision that borders on the mathematical. This section isn't about the laws passed or the speeches given. It's about the secret, reality of how a household survives the weight of being the world's most famous address. It's about the rituals that turn a high-pressure office into a functioning home. So here's the thing about White House protocol. People usually assume it's a stiff, Victorian holdover designed to keep people away. In reality, protocol exists because if you didn't have a rigid set of rules, the sheer volume of human ego entering the building would cause it to spontaneously combust. Think of it like a high-stakes seating chart at a wedding that never ends. The defining accomplishment of the modern staff system, honed over decades, is the creation of a frictionless environment. The goal is to ensure that the person making the biggest decisions in the world doesn't have to spend a single brain cell wondering if there's milk in the fridge or where their car keys are. It's a massive exercise in collective restraint and service, where hundreds of people work in total silence to ensure a single outcome: stability. One of the most misunderstood aspects of the daily routine is the transition. What actually happens when a new family moves in? Most people think it's a weeks-long process involving moving trucks and bubble wrap. It's actually a 5-hour sprint. While the country is watching the inauguration on TV, a literal army of resident staff is performing a choreographed ballet. They move the old furniture out, bring the new furniture in, hang the family photos, and even stock the pantry with the new president's favorite brand of toothpaste. By the time the new first family walks through the door for the first time, it doesn't feel like a museum, it feels like their house. This is a staggering logistical victory that happens every 4 or 8 years. It's a moment where the system decides that the peaceful transfer of power isn't just a political concept, it's a physical reality. It's the house itself saying, the office continues, even if the person changes. Then there's the matter of the press ops and the daily brief. We see the podiums and the camera lights, but the real secret is the evolution of how information is managed to prevent panic. Historically, the press lived almost on top of the president, literally. In the early 20th century, reporters would just hang out in the lobby, leaning against the furniture, hopping to catch a glimpse of someone important. The decision to formalize the press briefing room, built in a classic move of presidential utility right over the old swimming pool, was a stroke of genius. It created a designated theatrical space for conflict, which actually allowed the rest of the house to remain a place of work. By containing the noise, they preserved the signal. It's like giving a toddler a specific corner to draw in so they don't wax the entire living room floor. It's about managing energy so the house can function. The security evolution is perhaps the most impressive example of a positive accomplishment that remains mostly invisible. After various global tensions in the 20th century, the White House could have easily become a bunker. It could have been surrounded by 10-foot concrete walls and barbed wire, effectively cutting the president off from the people. But there has always been a quiet, stubborn refusal to do that. Instead, they use technology to create invisible security. The glass is reinforced, the air is filtered, and the grounds are monitored by sensors that can detect a stray cat from a mile away, yet the view from Pennsylvania Avenue remains mostly unobstructed. This restraint, choosing sophisticated defense over unsightly barriers, is a victory for the image of democracy. It's the architectural equivalent of staying cool under pressure. Here's the thing about the staff. The ushers, the chefs, the calligraphers, they are the true keepers of the flame. There's a secret rule of neutrality that exists among the permanent resident staff. Many of them work there for 30 or 40 years, serving presidents from completely opposite ends of the political spectrum with the exact same level of devotion. They don't see themselves as working for a politician. They work for the House. This professional stoicism is a vital, stabilizing force. When the outside world is arguing, the person folding the napkins is focused on the fact that the napkin must be perfect. This dedication to craft over clout is a quiet moral lesson in how to maintain an institution. They built a culture where the quality of the work is the only thing that matters, and in doing so, they provided a sense of continuity that survives any election cycle. As the evening settles in, think about the hosting ritual. When a state dinner happens, it's not just a fancy party, it's a diplomatic tool where every single detail, from the color of the flowers to the specific vintage of the wine, is a coded message of respect. The accomplishment here is the use of soft power. Instead of shouting across a table, the House uses hospitality to lower the temperature. It's much harder to maintain a geopolitical grudge when you're eating a world-class meal on 200-year-old china in a room that feels like a warm embrace. This tradition of excellence as diplomacy has prevented more friction than we will ever know. It's the House acting as a silent mediator, using its own history to remind everyone in the room that they are part of a much longer story. As we finish Part B, the rituals of the day are beginning to wind down. The press has gone home, the tour have ended, and the massive machinery of the protocol office is resetting for tomorrow. The House has once again survived the day not by being a fortress, but by being a perfectly tuned instrument. The secrets here aren't about hidden agendas. They're about the sheer, exhausting effort it takes to make something look effortless. It's the beauty of a well-oiled machine that doesn't need to make noise to prove it's working. And as the evening air cools the white sandstone outside, we prepare to look at the objects and the rooms themselves, the silent witnesses to these rituals. We now step into the quietest corners of the house to look at the objects that have survived the noise. If the protocols are the heartbeat, the artifacts are the memories. There is a deep, resonant peace in realizing that while leaders are temporary, the furniture is remarkably permanent. In this section, we aren't just looking at decor. We are looking at the secret life of things. Every desk, every portrait, and every gifted vase is a physical anchor in a shifting sea. The defining accomplishment of the White House as a museum is its ability to curate stability. It's about the items that were kept, the traditions that were polished, and the quiet quirks that remind us that even the most powerful rooms in the world are still just rooms where people sit, think, and try to do their best. Here's the thing about the furniture in the White House. It's not just old stuff. It's a form of historical gravity. Take the Resolute desk, for instance. Most people assume it's just a fancy table where the president signs things, but its existence is actually a masterclass in turning a potential conflict into a permanent bond. The wood came from a British ship, the HMS Resolute, which was abandoned in the Arctic and later found by Americans, who fixed it up and sent it back to Queen Victoria as a gesture of goodwill. When the ship was finally retired, the Queen had the desk made from its timbers and gifted it back. It's a literal cycle of getting it right. The desk is a constant reminder that cooperation is more durable than wood. Every time a president sits there, they are physically leaning on a decision to be constructive rather than combative. That desk is probably the most successful peace treaty ever disguised as an office supply. Then there is the secret of the portrait of George Washington, the one Dolly Madison famously saved in 1814. We usually hear the story as a frantic scramble, but the real accomplishment was the foresight. Dolly understood that if the British captured the image of the founder, they captured the narrative of the country. By refusing to leave until the canvas was cut from its frame and spirited away, she ensured that the soul of the house remained unbroken even when the walls were on fire. Today, it's the only object that has been in the White House since it opened. Its presence is a quiet victory of symbolic endurance. It's like keeping a single photo from your childhood home after a move. It makes the new place feel like the old one, providing a sense of home that transcends the physical structure. But the house isn't just a static museum. It's a place of constant, subtle furniture swaps. There's a massive underground storage facility, an archive of history, where pieces are rotated in and out based on the needs of the moment. Here's the thing. This isn't about interior design. It's about atmospheric engineering. If a president needs to host a particularly tense negotiation, the staff might bring in pieces that evoke a specific era of cooperation. They use the room to set the mood. The secret is that the environment is designed to make you feel the weight of history so that you act with more maturity than you might otherwise. It's hard to be petty when you're sitting on a chair that's seen the end of a world war. This use of history as a behavioral stabilizer is one of the house's most effective, if unheralded, tools. We also have the odd traditions that humanize the monumental. Think about the holiday setups, the way the house transforms every December. It would be easier to just hire a corporate decorator, but the accomplishment here is the involvement of volunteers from all over the country. They come in and spend days stringing lights and hanging ornaments. This ritual turns the people's house into a literal community project. It's a moment where the barrier between the government and the governed dissolves into a pile of tinsel and pine needles. The secret isn't in the grandeur of the tree, but in the fact that ordinary hands are the ones putting it up. It's a tradition that preserves the public in public office, reminding everyone involved that the house belongs to the neighbor down the street just as much as it belongs to the person in the Oval Office. Then there are the quiet quirks, the things that aren't quite presidential but are undeniably human. There's the bowling alley in the basement, the movie theater, and the hidden nooks where staffers go just to catch a breath of air. The defining decision to keep these normal spaces inside a high-security complex is vital. It's an acknowledgement that you cannot expect humans to perform at their peak if you treat them like robots. By building in spaces for play and rest, the house protects the mental health of those within it. It's a refusal to let the system completely swallow the individual. Even the most powerful person in the world needs a place to watch a movie and eat some popcorn, and the house provides that sanctuary. As we move toward the final part, the house is beginning to dim its lights. The artifacts are settled, the portraits are watching over empty hallways, and the night shift is taking over. These objects have done their job for the day. They have provided the backdrop for history, reminded the occupants of their responsibilities, and offered a soft place to land. The accomplishment of the museum side of the White House is that it doesn't just store the past, it uses the past to steady the present. It's a silent, wooden and canvas-bound insurance policy against the volatility of the moment. And now, as the corridors grow still, we turn to the final watch, the people who keep the flame alive while the world sleeps. We now enter the hours where that gravity feels the heaviest, yet the most peaceful. As the last of the West Wing staff clicks their car fobs in the parking lot and the hum of the city fades into a distant murmur, the White House transitions into its final, most intimate state. This is the night shift. If the day is about the theater of power, the night is about the quiet maintenance of the soul. There is a profound, constructive beauty in the way the house breathes when no one is watching. The secret here isn't a hidden room or a clandestine meeting. It's the sheer, disciplined constancy of the people who ensure that when the sun rises, the world finds a house that is ready, refreshed, and unshakable. So here's the thing about the White House at 3:00 a.m. It is never truly dark and it is never truly empty, but the energy changes from urgent to eternal. The defining accomplishment of the night crew, the engineers, the plumbers, the specialized cleaners, and the sentries, is the preservation of the first impression. Their work is a refusal to let time or wear and tear win. While the president sleeps, a team might be deep in the basement, fine-tuning the HVAC system that keeps the 200-year-old silk wallpaper from peeling, or meticulously hand-buffing the floors of the East Room. This isn't just janitorial work, it's a form of guardianship. They are the ones who ensure that the shadow of the house, its reputation for perfection, remains intact. It's a monumental task done in total anonymity, a masterclass in the idea that the most important work is often the work no one sees. The night shift also manages the delicate evolution of the house's security. In the stillness, the Secret Service sentries move like shadows through the corridors. Here's the thing, their presence isn't meant to feel like an occupation, but like a blanket. The secret to their success is presence without intrusion. They have mastered the art of being entirely aware of every heartbeat in the building while remaining virtually invisible to the family living there. This restraint is what allows the White House to remain a home rather than a prison. It's a defining decision to prioritize the psychological comfort of the inhabitants as much as their physical safety. By maintaining this quiet perimeter, they preserve the president's ability to think, to reflect, and to rest, which, in the grand scheme of things, is perhaps the most vital service anyone can provide to the nation. There is also the logistical miracle of the morning prep. Before the first light hits the rose garden, the house is already resetting. The secret kitchen staff are prepping the first pots of coffee. The calligraphers may be finishing a last-minute invitation for a head of state. The gardeners are out in the dew, ensuring not a single leaf is out of place. This routine is a continuous breath that has been exhaled every morning for over 2 centuries. The accomplishment here is the sheer defiance of entropy. In a world where things naturally fall apart, the White House night shift decides, every single night, to put it all back together. It's a story of how a worthwhile institution survives flawed conditions, not through a single heroic act, but through 10,000 small, correct choices made in the dark. As you settle into the deepest part of your sleep, imagine the silent corridors. There is a specific kind of light, a soft amber glow that stays on in the hallways. It's there for safety, but it also serves as a reminder that the pilot light of the Republic never goes out. The house is a system larger than themselves, as we said at the beginning, but it's a system made of human care. The final secret of the White House is that it isn't the power that makes it special, it's the routine. A building is made of stones, but a home is made of routines. The fact that the floors don't creak too loudly, that the thermostats are set just right, and that the gates are locked is what allows the grand history to happen during the day. We end our tour not on a note of grandeur, but on a note of steadiness. The White House has endured because it was designed with restraint, maintained with devotion and respected as a vessel for something greater than any one occupant. It's a story of what was preserved, the dignity of the office, what was built, a symbol of continuity, and what endured, the simple, quiet rituals of service. As the narrator of this late-night journey, I invite you to take that sense of stability with you. The house is standing, the watch is set, and the morning will come exactly as it should. History isn't just a list of names. It's the sound of a steady hand on a banister in the middle of the night. It's the knowledge that someone somewhere is making sure the roof doesn't leak and the light stays on. And with that thought, you can let go of the day. The house is in good hands. The story is safe. Everything is as it should be. Building on the steadiness of the night watch we just left behind, we move into the soft morning light of the house's aesthetic soul. Here's the thing about the White House. It could have easily become a rotating door of bad taste. Every 4 to 8 years, a new family moves in with their own ideas of what power looks like. Without a steadying hand, the interior would be a chaotic mess of 1970s shag carpet over 1880s mahogany. The defining accomplishment we're looking at here is the creation of the Permanent Committee for the Preservation of the White House. It was a decision to protect the building from the whims of its inhabitants, ensuring that while the people are temporary, the dignity of the space is legally protected. This wasn't an act of vanity. It was a refusal to let the nation's history be redecorated into oblivion. You have to understand the pressure environment of the mid-20th century. Modernity was screaming at the door. People wanted the White House to look like a sleek, mid-century office building or a Hollywood set. The defining hinge moment here belongs largely to Jacqueline Kennedy. Most people think she just liked pretty things, but her greatest accomplishment was framing the White House as a living educational tool. She pushed for the legislation that declared the White House a museum, making it so that the historic furnishings belonged to the house, not the person living there. It was a brilliant, constructive restraint. By giving up the right of the first family to treat the house like a personal sandbox, she preserved the visual narrative of the American story for every generation that followed. This era also saw the quiet, witty brilliance of the secret curators. These are the people who manage the gifts of state. Imagine the logistical absurdity. Every year, the house receives everything from priceless diamonds to giant wheels of cheese and, occasionally, live crocodiles. The system for handling these isn't just about storage. It's about diplomatic stewardship. The decision to treat every gift with a specific level of ritualized respect, even the ones that are a bit eccentric, is what keeps the wheels of international goodwill turning. It's an exercise in extreme patience. The accomplishment here is the ability to turn a pile of random objects into a curated record of global relationships. They built a system where a gift isn't just an item, it's a preserved moment of peace. Then there is the secret of the gardens. While the walls are stone, the grounds are a living, breathing timeline. Here's the thing about the Rose Garden. It's not just a place for press conferences. It was redesigned under the Kennedy administration to be a stage for democracy that felt intimate rather than intimidating. The decision to use specific, low-lying flora was a stroke of genius. It allowed for maximum security visibility while making the president look like they were standing in a backyard, not a fortress. It's a masterclass in environmental psychology. By shaping the land to feel accessible, they softened the hard edges of the executive branch. It's the house using nature to say, we are still part of the earth, not above it. As we watch the staff move through these rooms in the early morning, think about the calligraphy office. Tucked away in a quiet corner, a handful of artists handwrite every single invitation and place card. In the age of digital printing, this seems like an absurdity, like opening a pizzeria with no oven, as we might say. But the refusal to modernize this one specific detail is a defining choice. It signals that at the highest level of government, the human touch still matters. It's a constructive outcome that prevents the institution from feeling like a faceless machine. That little bit of ink on paper is a physical anchor in a world of disappearing pixels. The long shadow of these decisions is a house that feels older than it is and more stable than it probably should be. Every time a curator refuses to sell a piece of ugly, old furniture that turns out to be a masterpiece, or a first lady decides to restore a room rather than gut it, they are adding a layer of protection to the Republic's identity. They are proving that you don't have to destroy the past to live in the present. As the house begins its morning bustle, the invisible designers have already done their work. The stage is set, the history is polished, and the continuity is absolute. We now step into the invisible hum of the 21st century. As the sun climbs higher over the Potomac, it illuminates a house that is essentially a high-tech paradox. Here's the thing about the White House. It's a 1790s shell wrapped around a 2020 supercomputer. The transition from the era of handwritten notes to the era of instantaneous global data was a pressure environment that could have easily stripped the building of its soul. The defining accomplishment of the modern era was the invisible integration, the decision to modernize the house's brains without scarring its face. It was a refusal to let technology dictate the aesthetic, ensuring the president remains a leader on a stage, not just a technician in a server room. Think about the sheer logistical absurdity of the Situation Room. Most people assume it's a dark, cavernous hall out of a spy movie, but for a long time, it was essentially a cramped basement with a few telephones and a lot of coffee stains. The defining decision came when the system realized that information wasn't just power, it was a liability if it wasn't filtered. The massive renovations to the sit room weren't just about faster internet. They were about creating a constructive filter. The goal was to build a space that suppressed the noise of the world so the people inside could focus on the signal. It's an exercise in strategic silence. By creating a room that is perfectly isolated from the outside world, they preserved the president's ability to deliberate without the frantic pressure of the 24-hour news cycle leaking through the walls. So here's the thing about secret communications. It's not just about encryption, it's about continuity of presence. One of the greatest accomplishments of the White House Signal Corps, the quiet experts who follow the president with the football, is their ability to make the White House portable. Whether the president is in the Oval Office or a tent in a remote desert, the House travels with them. This isn't just a technical feat, it's a psychological stabilizer for the entire world. The decision to invest heavily in this seamless authority ensures that there is never a moment of perceived vacuum. It prevents panic before it can even start. It's the ultimate positive lock. The system is designed so that the house is never truly empty of its authority, no matter where the physical body of the leader might be. Even the way the house handles the modern internet is a study in reserved influence. While the rest of the world moved toward the move fast and break things philosophy of Silicon Valley, the White House digital team made a defining choice to move with institutional gravity. They didn't just jump on every new platform. They waited until they could use those tools to increase transparency without sacrificing dignity. The creation of the digital archives and the open data initiatives was a massive, constructive outcome. It turned the people's house into a people's database. They took the walls down digitally, allowing anyone with a smartphone to walk the corridors. This wasn't a downfall of privacy. It was a building of trust. They used the tech to prove that the house has nothing to hide, which is the most powerful defense a democracy has. As the morning meetings begin in the West Wing, you have to appreciate the atmospheric control that modern technology provides. It's not just about the secret sensors we mentioned earlier. It's about the way the house manages its own energy. The White House has quietly become one of the most sustainable historic buildings in the country. The decision to install solar panels, twice, actually, after some back and forth in the 80s, and to upgrade to ultra-efficient systems was a quiet moral extraction. It proved that you can respect a 200-year-old tradition while still being a responsible citizen of the future. They didn't just preserve the past, they protected the environment that the past sits in. It's a subtle but vital accomplishment, showing that the oldest house in the neighborhood can still be the smartest one on the block. The long shadow of this digital evolution is a house that feels more connected to the average citizen than ever before, yet remains a secure, private sanctuary for the heavy work of governance. The accomplishment here is the balance. They didn't let the wires show. They didn't let the hum of the servers drown out the tick of the grandfather clocks. As the staff moves through the rooms, checking their tablets and adjusting the secure feeds, the secret remains the same. Use the tool, but don't let the tool become the master. The house is still a house. The technology is just the modern version of the stone and mortar, something to keep the wind out and the conversation in. Connecting back to that atmospheric control we just explored in the digital realm, we now return to the ground level to look at the people who handle the physical reality of a house that never stops. Here's the thing about the White House. It's essentially a five-star hotel, a high-security bunker, a global broadcasting studio, and a private family residence all mashed into one footprint. The pressure to keep these competing identities from crashing into each other is immense. The defining accomplishment here, one that is rarely in the history books but is felt by everyone who walks the halls, is the system of invisible maintenance. It's the decision to treat the mundane as if it were monumental. It's a refusal to let the small stuff fail, because in a place like this, there is no such thing as a small mistake. So here's the thing about the White House kitchens. They are a logistical masterpiece of strategic hospitality. Most people assume it's all about French chefs and soufflés. While the food is world-class, the real secret is the versatility of scale. The kitchen staff can pivot from making a single grilled cheese sandwich for a sick child in the private residence to serving a four-course meal for 200 world leaders in the state dining room, often within the same hour. The defining decision to keep this entire operation in-house, rather than outsourcing it to elite catering firms, was a stroke of genius for both security and soul. It ensures that the food isn't just a commodity, it's an extension of the house's character. This consistency creates a sense of home that stabilizes the high-octane environment of the West Wing. It's a constructive outcome that proves comfort is a necessary component of power. This dedication to the mundane extends to the White House florists. Tucked away in the basement, this team handles one of the house's most subtle but effective psychological tools. The secret is that the flowers are never just chosen because they look nice. Every arrangement is a calculated decision based on the specific diplomacy of the day. If a leader from a desert nation is visiting, the house might be filled with lush, water-rich greenery as a silent gesture of abundance and welcome. The accomplishment here is the use of botanical diplomacy. It's a way of communicating respect and attention to detail without saying a word. By obsessing over the small detail of a centerpiece, they contribute to the large goal of a successful summit. It's the house using every sense, sight, smell, and touch to lower the temperature and foster agreement. Then there is the secret of the White House carpentry shop. Because the house is so old and its uses are so modern, things break constantly. But you can't just call a local handyman to fix a door in the Oval Office. The house employs its own master carpenters who are more like structural historians. Their defining accomplishment is the preservation of the feel. When they fix a floorboard or repair a window casing, they use techniques and materials that match the original 18th century craftsmanship. They refuse to take the easy, modern way out if it means losing the tactile history of the building. This restraint ensures that the house doesn't just look old, it feels substantial. It's a victory for authenticity in an increasingly plastic world. They are the ones who ensure that when the president leans against a railing, it doesn't just hold their weight, it connects them to the weight of the office. We also have to consider the chief usher's office. Think of the chief usher as the COO of the house. Their greatest accomplishment is the management of transitions, not just the big 4-year transitions, but the daily ones. When a room goes from a press briefing to a formal tea in 20 minutes, it's the usher's team that makes it happen with a witty, calm precision that makes a pizzeria with no oven look like child's play. They handle the irony of the personal, making sure the president's favorite chair is exactly where it needs to be, while also managing the movement of 500 tourists. Their work is a defining decision to prioritize harmony over chaos. They are the friction reducers, the ones who ensure that the system remains a continuous breath rather than a series of gasps. As the morning progresses and the house moves into its full work mode, these mundane routines provide the foundation. The long shadow of this work is a building that feels effortless, even though it is the result of thousands of hours of hidden labor. The accomplishment is the dignity of service. Every person who polishes a doorknob or preps a salad is participating in the maintenance of a national symbol. They aren't just working a job, they are protecting a legacy. And as we prepare to look at the rules and rituals that govern the people inside, remember that those rituals only work because the house itself, the physical, cleaned, fed, and flowered space, is ready for them. Building on the stewardship of the mundane we just witnessed in the kitchens and carpentry shops, we now move toward the most paradoxical aspect of the White House, its public nature. Here's the thing about the White House. It is likely the only head of state residence in the world that lets strangers walk through the front door just to see the wallpaper. This isn't just a quirk of American culture. It is a defining accomplishment of institutional transparency. The decision to keep the people's house open to the people, even during times of war, civil unrest, or global pandemics, is a massive, constructive refusal to let fear dictate the terms of democracy. It's the House's way of saying that the government doesn't live above the citizens, but among them. The pressure to close the gates has been constant since 1812. Every time there's a security scare, a committee of very serious people in dark suits suggests that maybe, just maybe, we should stop letting the public in. But the secret of the White House's endurance is its accessibility as a defense. By remaining open, the House proves its own stability. The defining hinge moment for this was during the mid-20th century, when the tour system was formalized. Instead of a chaotic free-for-all, it became a choreographed educational ritual. The decision to turn a security headache into a civic lesson was a stroke of genius. It turned every visitor into a stakeholder. When you walk through those rooms, you aren't just a tourist. You are, for 15 minutes, a part of the House's story. This creates a long shadow of public investment that no concrete wall could ever provide. So here's the thing about the public tour route. It is a masterpiece of controlled narrative. You see the East Room, the Blue Room, and the State Dining Room, the State Floor. But the real accomplishment is how the House manages the boundary between the public's right to see and the family's right to live. The secret is in the floor plan. The resident staff and the Secret Service have mastered the vertical separation. While a family from Ohio is marveling at the Gilbert Stuart portrait of Washington, the first family might be 10 feet directly above them, having a normal Tuesday morning breakfast. This proximity is a quiet absurdity that keeps the presidency grounded. It is a constant, physical reminder to the person in the office that they are merely a temporary tenant in a building owned by the people downstairs. This brings us to the White House Visitor Center. Most people assume it's just a gift shop and a place to find a bathroom. But its creation was a defining decision to move the heavy lifting of the crowds away from the fragile historic structure. By building a world-class museum down the street, they preserved the physical White House from the literal weight of millions of feet. It was a restraint that preserved. They gave the public more information and better access, while giving the House itself a chance to breathe. This constructive outcome ensures that the House stays standing for another 200 years without becoming a hollowed-out shell. It's like moving the heavy party to the backyard so the antique floorboards in the living room don't snap. We also have to look at the press corps access. The decision to allow reporters to live, eat, and work inside the White House complex is a secret that most other world leaders find baffling. It's like inviting a critic to live in your guest room while you're writing your novel. But here's the thing. This proximity is the greatest positive lock on accountability we have. The accomplishment isn't the friction it causes, it's the legitimacy it confers. By allowing the press to be mere steps away from the Oval Office, the House signals that it is not afraid of the light. This refusal to hide behind a distant fortress wall is what makes the White House a symbol of a system larger than the individual. It proves that the office is resilient enough to handle scrutiny. As the morning tour winds down and the midday sun hits the north portico, you realize that the White House's greatest secret is that it isn't a secret at all. It is a building that has successfully balanced the impossible demands of being a fortress, a home, and a public square. The accomplishment is the stability of openness. In a world where power usually hides behind thicker and thicker glass, the White House continues to offer a tour. It remains a place where the mundane work of a janitor and the monumental work of a president happen within earshot of a high school field trip. And as we transition into the rituals of power that happen once the tourists leave, we see that the house is always, fundamentally, a stage for the people. Building on the architecture of access we just walked through, where the public and the powerful share the same floorboards, we now enter the most refined gear of the machine, the rituals of international hosting. Here's the thing about a state dinner or a diplomatic summit. It is essentially a high-wire act where the safety net is made of 19th century etiquette. In a world of instant tweets and rapid-fire diplomacy, the White House's defining accomplishment is its refusal to hurry. The decision to maintain the slow, grueling precision of formal protocol is a constructive choice to prioritize dignity over convenience. It creates a space where soft power can do the work that hard power usually breaks. Most people assume that the rigid rules of who walks where and who sits next to whom are just antiquated snobbery. But so here's the thing. Protocol is actually a system of de-escalation. When two leaders who might be on the brink of a trade war or a border dispute enter the state dining room, the secret is that the House has already made all the difficult decisions for them. By following a script that hasn't changed much since the 1800s, the House removes the ego friction. No one has to fight for status because the status is already dictated by the seat. This creates a pressure environment that is strangely calming. The defining accomplishment here is the preservation of the neutral zone. The House acts as a silent mediator, using its own history to remind the guests that they are part of a long-standing tradition of adult behavior. The secret weapon of this hospitality is the White House social secretary. Their greatest accomplishment isn't throwing a good party, it's the engineering of connection. They spend weeks researching the specific cultural nuances of a visiting guest, not to pander, but to show a level of respect that makes conflict feel uncivilized. If a visiting dignitary sees a specific flower from their home province or hears a piece of music that matters to their culture, the temperature in the room drops. This is soft power in its purest form. The decision to obsess over these details is a refusal to be generic. It turns the House into a mirror that reflects the guest's best self back at them. It's the diplomatic equivalent of giving someone a perfectly timed gift that proves you've actually been listening. Then there's the ritual of the exchange. When leaders swap gifts, it's often seen as a photo op. But the accomplishment here is the creation of a shared archive. These gifts aren't just trinkets, they are physical markers of a promise. The secret is that the House stores these items with a reverence that says, "We remember our friendship even when things get complicated." This constructive outcome ensures that even when administrations change, the physical evidence of international cooperation remains in the basement, ready to be brought out as a reminder of what was built. It's a way of making peace tangible. We also have to consider the press pool ritual. When the cameras are invited into the Oval Office for those few minutes of spraying photos, it's a choreographed dance of transparency. The defining decision to allow this, to let the world see the two leaders sitting in the yellow silk chairs, is a victory for visual legitimacy. It proves the meeting happened. It shows the body language. It signals to the world markets that the adults are in the room. Even if nothing is decided, in those 5 minutes, the image itself does the work of stabilizing global anxiety. It's the house providing a stage for a performance of stability that the world desperately needs to see. As the sun begins to dip lower, casting long shadows across the south lawn, the rituals of the day move toward their conclusion. The accomplishment of the White House's hosting engine is that it makes the impossible task of global leadership look like a well-mannered dinner party. It uses the small shadow of a perfectly placed fork to cast a long shadow of international peace. The secret is that the house doesn't just host people, it transforms them. It forces them to be the versions of themselves that are worthy of the room they are standing in. And as the guests depart and the house begins to reset, we prepare for the final chapter, the deep, restorative quiet where the house remembers why it exists. We find ourselves back where we started, in the hushed, amber-lit corridors of a house that never truly sleeps. Here's the thing about the White House. We like to think of it as a monument to the past, but its greatest secret is that it is a monument to the next 5 minutes. The defining accomplishment of the building and the systems that govern it is the creation of an infinite horizon. It is a refusal to be finished. Every repair, every polished silver spoon, and every secure line is a quiet, constructive bet that the future is worth the effort. It is a story not of a downfall, but of how something worthwhile, a messy, complicated, beautiful experiment in self-governance, survived flawed conditions because the house was built to hold it. As we reach the end of our late-night journey, let's look at the legacy of the after hours. In the deep night, the house performs its final, most important function. It provides a space for reflective restraint. When a president walks the halls alone at 2:00 a.m., they aren't surrounded by advisors or cameras. They are surrounded by the silence of the people who came before them. The secret is that the house is designed to be a moral mirror. The defining decision to maintain the historic integrity of the private quarters, the Lincoln bedroom, the treaty room, is a way of forcing the present to look the past in the eye. It is an accomplishment of contextual grounding. It prevents the person in power from feeling like the center of the universe, reminding them instead that they are just a single paragraph in a very long, ongoing book. Think about the secret of the president's desk one last time. There is a drawer where outgoing leaders often leave a note for the person taking their place. This ritual is the ultimate positive lock. It is a moment where politics evaporates, and all that remains is two humans sharing the same heavy burden. The accomplishment here is the preservation of grace. By choosing to offer a hand to their successor, even a rival, the departing leader ensures that the system remains a continuous breath. It is a refusal to let the chain break. This small, private act of kindness is the bedrock upon which the entire stability of the nation rests. It proves that the house is stronger than the hustle. So here's the thing about the White House secrets they don't want you to know. The real secret is that it's not about the trapdoors or the bunkers. The real secret is the dignity of the routine. It's the fact that in a world of constant change, the White House has decided to be the anchor. It has stayed standing through fires, wars, and social upheavals because it leaned into the constructive power of tradition. It didn't survive by being rigid. It survived by being resiliently soft. It used hospitality to blunt the edge of conflict and history to steady the hand of the present. It is a house made of routines, and those routines are the armor that protects the republic. As you drift off into a deep, peaceful sleep, let the image of the White House be your final thought, not as a place of shouting or stress, but as a quiet white stone house in the middle of a park, where the lights are dim, the floors are clean, and the watch is set. The defining accomplishment of this building is that it is still there. It has preserved the soul of a nation, built a stage for the world's most important conversations, and prevented the chaos of the moment from overwhelming the progress of the centuries. It has endured flawed conditions to create a constructive home for hope. Aj humni White House ko surf ek emerit nahi, balki ek living legacy kai tara deka hai. It is a building that says, we will try again tomorrow and we will do it with excellence. The secrets we've shared tonight, the hidden repairs, the botanical diplomacy, the silent night shift, are all just different ways of saying that the experiment is still working. The system is larger than the individual, and the house is the physical proof of that truth. Rest easy knowing that the corridors are being watched, the history is being polished, and the morning will come with a fresh pot of coffee and a new chance to get it right. The house is always preparing for the next 5 minutes. We now look at the one force that has consistently tested that preparation: the presence of children and pets. Here's the thing about the White House. You can have the most sophisticated security system in the world and a staff that can serve a 5-course meal in 20 minutes, but all of that dignity is immediately leveled by a toddler with a crayon or a dog that refuses to be house-trained. The defining accomplishment of the White House as a family home is its resilience to reality. The decision to allow the house to be a place of play, mess, and occasional mischief is a constructive choice to keep the presidency anchored in the very thing it's meant to protect: the American family. Most people assume that children in the White House live like little princes and princesses in a gilded cage. But the secret is that the house has always been a giant historical playground that forces the system to remain flexible. Think of the Roosevelt children, who famously treated the hallways like a race track and even managed to sneak a pony into the elevator to visit an ailing brother. The defining hinge moment here wasn't a policy change. It was the refusal to sanitize. The staff and the public could have demanded that the house remain a sterile museum, but instead, they leaned into the quiet absurdity of it all. By allowing the house to be messy, they preserved the president's humanity. It's hard to develop a God complex when you have to help your kid find a lost hamster under a 200-year-old sideboard. This grounding effect is a positive lock on the leader's ego. So here's the thing about White House pets. They are the ultimate secret diplomats. From Lincoln's goats to the modern era's celebrity dogs, pets serve a vital, constructive function that goes beyond companionship. They are de-escalation engines. There is a famous story about a tense meeting where a dog walked in, wagging its tail, and the room's temperature immediately dropped. The accomplishment here is the softening of the office. The decision to keep animals in the house is a visual signal to the world that the person in charge is capable of care and empathy. It's a way of building trust with the public without saying a word. A dog in the rose garden is a symbol of normalcy in an abnormal life. It's a defining decision to prioritize the emotional health of the family over the pristine perfection of the carpets. Then there is the secret of the White House schoolrooms. Over the decades, several presidents have set up actual classrooms on the 3rd floor so their children could have a semblance of a normal education away from the cameras. The accomplishment here is the creation of a private sanctuary. By building a world within a world, the house proves its ability to protect the vulnerable. It's a refusal to let the system consume the next generation. This constructive outcome ensures that the children who grow up in the White House don't leave it as cynical artifacts, but as well-adjusted people who happen to live in a famous house. It is a masterclass in institutional empathy. We also have to consider the secret of the staff-child bond. Because the resident staff stays for decades, they often become the most stable figures in the lives of White House children. They are the ones who teach them how to bake cookies or tell them stories about the presidents who lived there 50 years ago. The defining decision of the staff to act as secret guardians of the children's childhoods is one of the most heartwarming yet invisible successes of the building. They provide a long shadow of stability that outlasts any single election. They ensure that for a child, the White House isn't a fortress of power, but a place where someone always knows your favorite snack. As the late afternoon sun begins to cast a golden hue over the south lawn, a space that has seen everything from Easter egg rolls to games of catch, you realize that the house's greatest secret is its capacity for joy. Amidst the heavy decisions and global pressures, the house has always made room for the mundane magic of growing up. The accomplishment is that the house never became too stiff to hold a birthday party. it remained a home. And as we transition from the family life of the residents to the secret advisors who have haunted these halls, remember that a house that can handle a pony in an elevator can handle just about anything. There is a recurring theme in the history of the building that involves the defining refusal to rely solely on the official system. The pressure environment of the presidency is designed to isolate the leader. It surrounds them with people who are often too afraid or too ambitious to tell the truth. The defining accomplishment of the White House as a workspace is the preservation of the unfiltered voice. Over 2 centuries, presidents have cultivated secret circles, friends, former mentors, or even the House's own staff, who serve as a moral thermostat. This isn't about subverting democracy. It's about a constructive outcome that prevents the president from breathing their own exhaust. It is the House's way of ensuring that the person at the top remains connected to the ground. So here's the thing about the kitchen cabinet, a term born in the era of Andrew Jackson but perfected over the years. It represents a strategic restraint of ego. When a leader reaches out to an old friend from their hometown to ask, "How does this actually sound to a normal person?" they are making a decision to prioritize reality over rhetoric. The secret is that the White House has always had these ghost advisors. The accomplishment here is the creation of a safe harbor for dissent. By bringing in voices that don't care about a promotion or a title, the House protects itself from the groupthink that usually topples empires. It is a masterclass in using soft influence to balance hard power. One of the most profound examples of this secret influence is the role of the White House resident staff as confidants. Because the ushers and stewards are there for decades, they possess a shadow memory that no political appointee can match. There are countless stories of a president, burdened by a monumental decision, seeking the quiet, steady perspective of a butler who has seen 5 previous presidents deal with similar crises. The defining accomplishment here is the continuity of wisdom. The staff doesn't give policy advice, but they provide a sense of temporal scale. They are the House's way of whispering, "This too shall pass, and the House will still be here." This is a positive lock on perspective that prevents the panic of the moment from becoming a catastrophe. Then there is the secret of the late-night correspondence. Throughout history, presidents have used the quiet hours of the House to engage in deep, written dialogues with thinkers and critics outside the political bubble. The accomplishment here is the maintenance of intellectual humility. The decision to spend one's limited energy reading a letter from a skeptical citizen or a visionary scientist and actually responding is a constructive outcome that keeps the office from becoming a vacuum. It turns the White House into a receiving station for the nation's best and most honest ideas. It's the House acting as a filter, allowing the system to be updated by the very people it serves. We also have to consider the secret of the unofficial guest. Sometimes, the most important person in the White House isn't the visiting prime minister, but the person who was invited for a quiet dinner away from the press. These meetings are where the real refinement of purpose happens. The defining decision to use the House's private spaces for these unseen encounters is a victory for human-scale diplomacy. It proves that the most complex problems are often solved by 2 people sitting in comfortable chairs, far away from the podiums. The House provides the privacy that makes this honesty possible. It's the architectural equivalent of a deep breath. As the evening settles back into that familiar amber glow, you realize that the White House isn't just a place where orders are given. It's a place where the truth is sought in the most unlikely corners. The accomplishment is that the House has never become so formal that it couldn't accommodate a friend, or so powerful that it couldn't listen to a butler. The secret is that the most influential voices are often the ones that don't have a microphone. And as we transition from these shadow advisors to the evolution of the White House secret, technology part II, looking at how the House became a pioneer of modern science, remember that even the most high-tech system is only as good as the human heart that guides it. There is a recurring secret in the building's history. The president was often the first person in the country to try something that would eventually change everyone's life. Think about the arrival of the telephone. Most people assume it was an instant hit, but when the first phone was installed in 1877, the system didn't really know what to do with it. The defining hinge moment was the refusal to treat it as a toy. Instead of dismissing it as a gimmick, the house integrated it into the daily routine. The accomplishment here was the democratization of speed. By bringing high-speed communication into the heart of the government, the house set the standard for a nation that was about to shrink the distances between its people. It was a masterclass in operational foresight. The house understood that to lead a modern nation, it had to speak the language of the modern world. So here's the thing about the secret of White House electricity. It was terrifying. When Benjamin Harrison had the house wired in 1891, he and his wife were so scared of being electrocuted that they refused to touch the light switches. They would often go to sleep with the lights burning all night because they didn't want to risk a shocking experience. But here's the constructive outcome. They didn't rip the wires out. The defining decision was to normalize the unknown. By keeping the lights on, the White House signaled to the American public that this new, invisible force was safe and necessary. It was a positive lock on national progress. The House acted as the country's beta tester, proving that the future, while intimidating, was worth the risk. It's like being the first person in the neighborhood to get a microwave. You're the one who proves it won't blow up the kitchen. Then there is the secret of the White House telegraph room. During the Civil War, this was the original Situation Room. Lincoln would spend his nights there, reading raw data directly from the front lines. The accomplishment here was the elimination of the information lag. The decision to put the technology directly inside the House, rather than at the War Department, was a stroke of genius that shifted the power dynamic of the presidency forever. It turned the president from a distant figurehead into a real-time commander. This was a monumental retrospective moment. It established the precedent that the president must be the most informed person in the room. The House provided the physical space for this data-driven leadership to take root. This pioneer spirit extended even to the secret of the indoor climate. Long before central air was a standard feature of American life, the White House was experimenting with ways to keep the executive brain cool. In the early 20th century, they used a primitive system involving massive fans blowing over bins of ice in the attic. It was a quiet absurdity that looked like a science fair project, but the result was constructive. It allowed for year-round governance. Before this, the government essentially shut down in the summer because the humidity was so brutal. The decision to solve the weather was a victory for institutional consistency. It proved that the work of the Republic shouldn't be dictated by the thermometer. We also have to consider the medical secret of the building. The White House has a fully functioning medical unit that is essentially a mini hospital. The defining accomplishment here is the preservation of the human asset. By having top-tier medical care mere seconds away, the House ensures that the system is never paralyzed by a health crisis. This isn't just about the president's health, it's about the stability of the chain of command. The decision to build this capacity into the House was a strategic restraint against chaos. It's a way of saying that the office is too important to be left to the whims of a flu season. As we watch the modern technicians move through the secret server rooms and cable vaults today, you realize that the White House is a living record of human ingenuity. The accomplishment is that it never got stuck in a time warp. It remained a pioneer. The secret is that the House is always looking for the next way to be better, faster, and more secure. And as we transition from the high-tech laboratory to the final traditions of the East Wing, looking at how the House manages the public heart, remember that the wires are just there to carry the message. The message itself is what actually matters. Here's the thing about the East Wing. For over a century, it was essentially the invisible wing. People assumed it was just a place where invitations were addressed and flower arrangements were debated. But the secret reality is that the East Wing has often been the laboratory for the nation's most successful social initiatives. The defining hinge moment for this shift was the recognition of symbolic capital. Over time, the House realized that while the president had the power of the law, the First Lady had the power of the lived experience. The decision to use this influence to tackle issues that the West Wing was too political to touch, literacy, historic preservation, mental health, or beautification, was a stroke of genius. It was a constructive outcome that expanded the system without needing a single vote from Congress. So here's the thing about secret advocacy. It works because it's not loud. The East Wing's greatest accomplishment is the management of the national mood. Think about the defining decision during the Great Depression to use the White House as a literal correspondence school for the nation. Thousands of letters from struggling families were answered with empathy and often actual resources. This wasn't a downfall of protocol, it was a building of hope. The House proved it could listen. This soft power acted as a psychological stabilizer during a time when the country felt like it was rattling apart. It turned the White House from a distant marble palace into a kitchen table for the whole country. This era of the East Wing also saw the secret development of the White House social strategy as a tool for civil rights. Long before the laws caught up, the East Wing was making defining decisions about who was invited to the dinner table. The accomplishment here was the normalization of inclusion. By quietly ensuring that the most famous room in America was filled with a diverse cross-section of the country, the House was signaling the future to the present. It was a restraint against exclusion. They didn't have to give a speech about it. They just had to set the table. The image of a diverse group of Americans breaking bread in the state dining room was a more powerful constructive outcome than 1,000 press releases. Then there is the secret of the White House endowment. One of the most vital, yet boring-sounding, accomplishments was the creation of a private-public partnership to fund the House's historic needs. The decision to move the financial burden of staying beautiful away from the taxpayer and onto a dedicated trust was a masterpiece of fiscal stewardship. It ensured that the House would never have to beg for money to fix a roof or restore a painting. It was a positive lock on the building's future. It proved that the nation's heritage was worth protecting through a sustainable, nonpartisan system. It's like setting up a college fund for your house. It's the ultimate act of long-term thinking. We also have to consider the secret of the advocacy tour. The East Wing mastered the art of taking the White House on the road. Whether it was visiting national parks or urban schools, the message was always the same. The White House is an extension of your community. The accomplishment here was the dissolution of distance. By making the office feel accessible and human-scale, the East Wing prevented the system from becoming a faceless bureaucracy. The decision to prioritize this human connection is what has kept the White House relevant in an age of digital cynicism. As the morning transitions into the high-noon hustle, the East Wing's influence is everywhere. You see it in the choice of a specific guest, the theme of a seasonal event, and the quiet dignity of the staff. The accomplishment is that the House has two distinct ways of leading, one through the law and one through the heart. The secret is that you can't have one without the other. And as we move from this quiet revolution to the evolution of White House security part II, looking at how the House protects its secrets in an age of satellites, remember that the best defense isn't a wall, it's a culture of respect. There is a recurring secret in how the House handles its own defense. It tries its best not to look like it's defending anything at all. In the late 20th century, the pressure environment changed. Between the rise of global tensions and the sheer scale of modern technology, the system faced a defining hinge moment. They could have turned the White House into a literal bunker, a windowless cube of concrete buried under the lawn. Instead, the decision was made to invest in technological transparency. The accomplishment here was the development of security that exists in the negative space. The bollards that look like simple lampposts, the windows that look like glass but can stop a kinetic blast, and the sensors buried in the grass that can see heat signatures from 3 blocks away. These are all triumphs of architectural restraint. By making the security invisible, they preserve the house's identity as an open home. So here's the thing about the no-fly zone. It's not just a line on a map. It's a masterclass in electronic stewardship. The secret is that the air above the White House is one of the most monitored spaces on the planet. The accomplishment here is the creation of a digital shield. The decision to use high-frequency jamming and satellite monitoring, rather than, say, putting anti-aircraft guns on the roof for everyone to see, is a constructive outcome that maintains the peace of the neighborhood. It prevents the house from looking like an occupied territory. It's a positive lock on the city's skyline, ensuring that the visual landscape of the capital remains a symbol of liberty rather than a theater of war. It's like having a high-tech alarm system that doesn't require a beware of dogs sign on the fence. The safety is absolute, but the vibe remains welcoming. This invisible perimeter also extends to the way the house handles the secret of cyber deterrence. In an age where a laptop can be as dangerous as a tank, the White House has had to build a digital wall that is just as thick as its sandstone ones. The defining accomplishment here is the professionalization of digital defense. The decision to treat the house's data as a national artifact was a stroke of genius. It turned the IT department into a cyberguard. This constructive outcome ensures that the president can communicate with the world without the fear of being unplugged. It's a victory for institutional integrity in a world of disappearing signals. The house isn't just protecting its secrets, it's protecting its ability to function as a reliable node in a global network. Then there is the secret of the uniformed division of the Secret Service. These are the officers you see on the sidewalks, the ones who give directions to tourists and patiently answer questions for the 1,000th time. Their greatest accomplishment is the humanization of authority. The decision to keep these officers approachable and engaged, rather than acting like robotic sentries, is a vital, constructive choice. It turns the security of the house into a community interaction. This soft defense acts as a psychological buffer. It's much harder for a person to harbor ill will toward an institution when the person representing that institution is helpfully pointing them toward the nearest metro station. It is a masterclass in de-escalation through politeness. We also have to consider the secret of the grounds management as defense. Even the trees are part of the plan. The placement of every oak and elm on the south lawn is a calculated decision that balances beauty with line of sight. The accomplishment here is the integration of nature and safety. By using the landscape to provide cover and concealment without building walls, the house maintains its green heart. This is a positive lock on the aesthetic soul of Washington, D.C. It proves that you don't have to sacrifice the environment to protect the occupant. The house remains a park precisely because the park is also a shield. As the afternoon light begins to stretch across the lawn, you realize that the White House's security is a living testament to the idea that true strength is quiet. The accomplishment is that the house doesn't scream danger, it whispers stability. The secret is that the more secure the house becomes, the more it strives to look like it has nothing to fear. It is a constructive, ongoing victory of confidence over anxiety. And as we transition from this invisible perimeter to the secret history of White House visitors, looking at how the house handles the irony of the famous guest, remember that the gates are there to let the right people in, not just to keep the wrong people out. There is a recurring secret in the history of the residents. The most impactful meetings often happen with people the press doesn't even notice. In the mid-20th century, the pressure environment of social change forced a defining hinge moment. The system could have tightened its circles, inviting only the safe and the vetted. Instead, the decision was made to use the White House as a stage for the unheard. The accomplishment here was the democratization of prestige. Think of the civil rights leaders, the labor organizers, or the student activists who were invited to the house not just to talk, but to be seen talking. By giving these individuals the same china and the same handshake as a king, the house was using its own soft power to confer legitimacy on their cause. This was a positive lock on social progress. It proved that the government was listening long before the legislation was signed. So here's the thing about the irony of the famous guest. Celebrities are great for the cameras, but the house's real work happens during the quiet lunch. One of the greatest constructive outcomes of the modern presidency is the secret outreach to ideological rivals. Over the years, many presidents have made a defining decision to invite their harshest critics for a private meal in the family quarters, away from the microphones. The secret is that the house acts as a humanizing filter. It's much harder to demonize someone when you've shared a bowl of soup in a room that feels like a home. This use of the house as a neutral ground has prevented more political stalemates than we will ever know. It's a victory for interpersonal diplomacy, proving that the physical space of the home can dissolve the walls of the office. This tradition of access also includes the secret of the White House fellows and interns. Every year, a new group of young people is brought into the system to see how the sausage is made. The accomplishment here is the cultivation of stewardship, the decision to invest time and resources in these young people, allowing them into the inner sanctum, is a long-term constructive bet on the future. It turns the White House into a civic accelerator. By demystifying the power of the building, the House ensures that the next generation of leaders sees the presidency not as a distant throne, but as a temporary job that requires immense care and humility. It's a positive lock on the quality of future governance, ensuring the continuous breath of the republic stays strong. Then there is the secret of the state visit shadow guests. For every president or prime minister who arrives in a motorcade, the House invites a few dozen regular citizens, teachers, soldiers, nurses, to attend the dinner. The defining accomplishment here is the bridging of the gap. By mixing the monumental with the mundane, the House reminds the world leaders that they are ultimately accountable to the people sitting at the end of the table. It is a strategic humbling of power. The decision to keep the people in the people's house during its most formal moments is what prevents the institution from floating away into the stratosphere of its own importance. It keeps the floorboards weighted down by reality. We also have to consider the secret of the grievance visit. Occasionally, the House makes a defining decision to open its doors to those who are protesting outside. This isn't just about PR, it's about institutional bravery. Bringing a group of protesters into the East Room to meet with senior staff is a constructive refusal to be intimidated by dissent. It turns a confrontation into a conversation. The accomplishment here is the validation of the public voice. It proves that even the most secure house in the world is still porous enough to hear a shout from the sidewalk. This soft defense is what prevents the pressure of the streets from blowing the roof off the building. As the sun sets and the motorcades depart, leaving the house to its evening silence, you realize that the White House's guest list is a map of the nation's progress. The accomplishment is that the house has always been big enough to hold both the king and the commoner. The secret is that it treats them exactly the same. It is a constructive, ongoing victory of inclusion over isolation. And as we transition from the people who visit the House to the secret history of the White House staff, looking at the multi-generational families who have actually run the building for a century, remember that the guests are just passing through, but the staff is the soul. There's a recurring secret in the basement of the White House, a culture of service that is passed down from father to son and mother to daughter. In an era where the average person changes jobs every few years, the resident staff represents a defiance of the disposable. The pressure environment of a political transition is essentially a systemic earthquake. Everything changes overnight. The policies, the priorities, the very faces in the hallway. But the staff provides the positive lock on reality. Their defining decision to remain strictly neutral, serving a new administration with the exact same devotion as the last, is a monumental accomplishment of professional integrity. They are the ones who tell the new president where the light switches are, how the fireplace draws, and why a certain painting in the hall has been there since 1902. They prevent the system from having a nervous breakdown every 4 years. So here's the thing about the secret of the staff's discretion. It isn't about hiding scandals. It's about protecting the humanity of the office. The ushers, maids, and stewards see the president at their most vulnerable, in their pajamas, sick with the flu, or grieving a personal loss. The accomplishment here is the creation of a psychological sanctuary. By maintaining a code of silence, the staff allows the president to be a human being within the residence walls. This is a constructive outcome that directly impacts global stability. A leader who has a safe place to fall apart is a leader who is more likely to keep it together when they step into the situation room. The staff's refusal to tell all is a gift of privacy that enables the burden of the office to be carried. This multi-generational tradition also includes the secret of the living archive. Because many staffers have been there for 40 years, they know things the official historians don't. They know exactly how a specific room felt during the Cuban Missile Crisis, or the exact moment a certain policy was born over a late-night snack. The defining decision of the House to value this oral history is a victory for institutional wisdom. The staff doesn't just clean the house, they remember it. This long shadow of memory acts as a stabilizer. When a young, frantic staffer thinks the world is ending, a veteran steward can quietly remind them that they've seen the world end 3 times before, and the house is still standing. It's a masterclass in temporal perspective. Then there is the secret of the inter-administration handover. While the outgoing and incoming political teams are often at each other's throats in the press, the permanent staff is quietly working behind the scenes to bridge the gap. Their greatest accomplishment is the frictionless transfer of life. The decision to prioritize the comfort of the new family over the politics of the moment is a constructive act of patriotism. They turn the house into a neutral gear that allows the machinery of government to shift without grinding. It's the House's way of saying that the Republic is more important than the party. This soft power of the staff is the invisible glue that holds the peaceful transfer of power together. We also have to consider the secret of the staff annex. Tucked away in the less glamorous corners of the building are the workshops and locker rooms where this community lives its own life. The accomplishment here is the maintenance of a moral center. These people aren't motivated by clout or social media followers. They are motivated by craft. The decision to treat the White House as a holy trust, rather than just a job, is what gives the building its unique, reverent atmosphere. It's a victory for dignity and labor. They prove that you don't need a title to be a guardian of democracy. You just need a steady hand and a sense of duty. As the evening shift takes over and the quiet hum of the vacuum cleaners begins in the distant rooms, you realize that the White House staff is the ultimate secret of the building's endurance. The accomplishment is that they have kept the flame alive through every storm. The secret is that they love the house more than they love the power inside it. It is a constructive, ongoing victory of character over ego. And as we transition from the people who run the house to the secret history of White House traditions, looking at how the house celebrates the milestones of the nation, remember that a house is only as strong as the people who take care of it when the cameras are off. There is a recurring secret in the way the house handles the passage of time. It uses tradition as a stabilizing force. Whether it's the Easter egg roll, the turkey pardon, or the lighting of the national Christmas tree, these events are more than just fluff. In a pressure environment where every word is scrutinized and every move is political, these traditions are a defining decision to create a nonpartisan breathing room. The accomplishment here is the humanization of the institution. By inviting thousands of children to run on the South Lawn or opening the doors for a holiday tour, the House dissolves the imperial presidency. It is a masterclass in strategic accessibility. The decision to keep these traditions alive is a victory for the common touch. ensuring that the house remains a home for the public's joy, not just its burdens. So here's the thing about the secret of the Easter egg roll. It is one of the oldest and most chaotic traditions in the building, dating back to 1878. But the constructive outcome is the reclaiming of public space. The tradition started because children were banned from rolling eggs on the Capitol grounds, and the president essentially said, "Come over to my place instead." This was a monumental hinge in the relationship between the leader and the led. It established the White House as a refuge for the citizens' whims. The accomplishment isn't the event itself, it's the precedent of openness. It proves that the most secure lawn in the world is still just a place for a kid to run. It's a positive lock on the idea that the president is a neighbor as much as a leader. This rhythm also includes the secret of the White House Historical Association. In the 1960s, a defining decision was made to create a body that would ensure the house's traditions weren't just remembered, but documented and shared. The accomplishment here was the institutionalization of the narrative. By creating a secret archive of how things are done, from the specific way the table is set for a head of state to the history of every ornament on the tree, they prevented the system from losing its soul. It was a constructive outcome that turned habit into heritage. This ensures that when a new family moves in, they aren't reinventing the wheel, they are joining a long, well-documented parade. It is a victory for cultural continuity. Then there is the secret of the presidential pardon rituals. While the turkey pardon gets the most laughs, the House also uses tradition to highlight the soft power of mercy and humor. The defining accomplishment here is the maintenance of the safety valve. In a job that is 99% life and death seriousness, these moments of quiet absurdity are vital for the mental health of the building. The decision to participate in these light-hearted traditions is a refusal to let the office become a tomb of solemnity. It's a way of signaling that the system is healthy enough to laugh at itself. This positive lock on humility is what keeps the presidency from becoming brittle under the weight of its own importance. We also have to consider the secret of the community service tradition. Almost every modern administration has used the White House as a launchpad for national service initiatives. The accomplishment here is the amplification of the individual. The decision to use the bully pulpit of the House to celebrate volunteers and local heroes is a constructive choice to shift the spotlight away from the government and toward the governed. It turns the White House into a national mirror, reflecting the best of American civic life back to the people. It is a victory for social cohesion, proving that the House's most important, secret, power is its ability to inspire. As the holiday lights twinkle on the north portico and the crowds disperse after another successful public event, you realize that the White House's traditions are the heartbeat of its endurance. The accomplishment is that the House has remained a place where the nation can celebrate together, regardless of the politics of the day. The secret is that the routine is the comfort. It is a constructive, ongoing victory of unity over division. And as we transition from these public rhythms to the secret history of the White House annexes, looking at the buildings that hold the overflow of power, remember that the House is the heart, but the body is much larger than you see. There is a recurring secret in the way the presidency actually functions. Most of the people who work at the White House don't actually work in the White House. Just a few steps across West Executive Avenue sits the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, EEOB, a massive granite Victorian masterpiece that was once the largest office building in the world. In the mid-20th century, as the role of the government exploded, the system faced a defining hinge moment. They could have gutted the original White House to make room for more desks, or they could have built a modern skyscraper on the lawn. Instead, the decision was made to annex the neighborhood. The accomplishment here was the preservation of the residential scale. By moving the vast majority of the staff, the economists, the lawyers, the policy wonks, into the EEOB, they saved the White House from becoming a faceless office park. It was a masterclass in atmospheric preservation. ensuring that the Oval Office remained a place of quiet deliberation rather than a frantic cubicle farm. So here's the thing about the secret of the White House tunnels. They aren't just for spy movies. There is a literal and figurative nervous system connecting these buildings. The defining accomplishment here is the integration of the dispersed. The decision to create a secure, seamless flow between the residents, the West Wing, and the EEOB was a stroke of genius that allowed for invisible efficiency. The secret is that the complex functions like a single organism, even though it's spread across several city blocks. This constructive outcome ensures that the continuous breath of the government isn't interrupted by a red light on Pennsylvania Avenue. It turns the entire neighborhood into a fortress of functionality. It's like having a home office that's actually a separate building in the backyard. It keeps the work out of the living room, but the commute is only 30 seconds. This expansion also includes the secret of Blair House, the president's official guest house across the street. Most people think it's just a fancy hotel for visiting royalty, but the real accomplishment is the outsourcing of diplomacy. By having a dedicated historic residence for guests, the White House preserves its own family life while offering a level of hospitality that is, secretly, superior to any five-star resort. The decision to treat Blair House as a wing of the White House is a constructive outcome that prevents the main house from feeling like a transit hub. It allows for refinement of the guest experience, making every head of state feel like they have a home in Washington. This soft power is a positive lock on international relationships, proving that the house knows how to be a host without losing its identity as a home. Then there is the secret of the new Executive Office Building, NEOB, and the smaller townhouses on Lafayette Square. The defining accomplishment here was the architectural diplomacy of the 1960s. There was a plan to tear down the historic 19th century houses on the square to build giant government blocks. But under the guidance of Jacqueline Kennedy and architect John Carl Warnick, the decision was made to save the square. They built the tall office buildings behind the small houses, using them as a secret screen. The constructive outcome was the protection of the national view. They got the office space they needed without destroying the historical context of the president's front yard. It was a victory for contextual growth, proving that you don't have to kill the past to accommodate the future. We also have to consider the secret of the remote offices. In the modern era, the White House complex extends to secure locations outside the city, places like Camp David. The accomplishment here is the creation of the strategic reset. The decision to maintain a rustic, woodsy retreat is a refusal to let the pressure of the city break the person in the office. It's a way of proving that sometimes the best way to lead is to step away from the desk. This positive lock on mental clarity ensures that the decisions made back at the White House are made with a fresh perspective. As the sun sets over the EEOB, casting its long shadow across the West Wing, you realize that the White House is more than just a building. It's an ecosystem. The accomplishment is that it has managed to grow to meet the needs of a superpower without losing the intimacy of a 1790s plan. The secret is that the complexity is hidden so the simplicity can shine. It is a constructive, ongoing victory of organization over sprawl. And as we transition from the physical buildings to the final moral extraction of our journey, looking at the 100th secret, the why behind the what, remember that the complex exists to serve the idea, and the idea is what keeps us all together. So here's the thing about the White House that most history books miss. It is a building designed to be outgrown. From the moment George Washington stood in the muddy fields of the Potomac, the house was a secret wager on the future. The accomplishment we must extract from these 18,500 words is the stability of the imperfect. We often look for heroes in history, but what the White House proves is that systems built by fallible, tired, and sometimes misguided people can still produce something worthwhile if those people remain committed to the dignity of the routine. The 100th secret is that the house doesn't run on power. It runs on the quiet belief that tomorrow is worth preparing for. This brings us to the secret of the resilient handoff. Throughout this script, we've seen how transitions are the house's greatest test. The defining hinge moment of every administration is the moment the system is handed to a rival. The accomplishment here is the victory of the institution over the individual. The decision to leave the house in better shape than you found it, to fix the leaks, to preserve the papers, to leave a note of encouragement, is the ultimate positive lock on democracy. It proves that the house is a container for something much larger than any one person's ego. This constructive outcome is what has prevented the Republic from fracturing during its most pressurized moments. It is the house's way of saying, the office remains, even when the man departs. As you prepare for sleep, think about the secret of the White House light. If you look at the house at 4:00 a.m., there is almost always a single window glowing. It might be a sentry, a staffer prepping for a summit, or a president wrestling with a decision that will shape the next century. The accomplishment here is the continuity of vigilance. The decision to never let the house go completely dark is a symbolic and literal commitment to the world. It signals that someone is always home, someone is always watching, and the continuous breath of the nation is never held. This long shadow of presence is what gives the global markets, the military, and the average citizen the confidence to dream. The light in the window is a secret promise that the foundations are secure. We also have to acknowledge the moral extraction of the People's House name. We call it that not because everyone can sleep there, but because everyone's story is reflected there. The defining accomplishment of the building's history is its absorption of the national narrative. Every protest on the sidewalk and every celebration in the East Room adds a layer of secret strength to the walls. The house has learned to listen. The decision to remain at the center of the nation's most difficult conversations, civil rights, wars, economic shifts, is a constructive choice to be a lightning rod rather than a bunker. It proves that the most worthwhile things are the ones that stand in the wind, not the ones that hide from it. And so, we return to the quiet address we started with. Aj Humni White House Ko Ek Living Museum Kai Taradeka High. We have seen that a building is made of routines, and routines are made of people. The secret to the White House's 200-year run isn't a hidden basement or a high-tech shield. It is the craftsmanship of continuity. It is the plumber who fixes the leak so the president can think. It is the curator who saves the portrait so the nation can remember. It is the citizen who walks the tour so the house stays theirs. The house is settled now. The 100th secret is out. The White House is a home for the better angels of our nature, built to withstand our worst moments. It is a story about how something worthwhile survived flawed conditions because we decided it was too important to let fall. As you drift off, let the weight of that stability comfort you. The light is on, the gates are secure, and the house is ready for tomorrow. You've walked the miles of corridors, seen the hidden history, and heard the whispers of the past. The journey is complete, the records are stored, and the morning will come exactly as it has for 2 centuries, with a sense of purpose and a fresh start.